This is the only real video getting today. Today was school and paper writing. So yeah, no time to get everything else together. So because of that, this is gonna be the only video. I think I'll just toss it in at the beginning of the video of Saturday's video, because currently it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. So yeah, I see news about the US and it breaks my heart. It really does. Anyway, I'm gonna go to bed. Good night. I'll just add this in the first vlog. Tomorrow's vlog. Today's, I don't know what I'm doing. Hey everyone, it's Victoria. I'm so glad you could join me. Today is day 15 of quarantine and it is March 29th, 2020. So, I missed a couple of vlogs. So day 12, or day 13 and day 14, I was busy doing this thing called schoolwork. And so I was so focused on my schoolwork that until I got homework done, I wouldn't film video. And so because of that, I didn't film a video and I was up working until really late at night and figuring out how to write things and puzzling them over and getting very confused, figuring it out a little bit, and then getting a little bit less confused. By the way, I'm an American who is currently quarantined in Spain. I am a master's student at the University of Bilbao and at the University of Malta studying international humanitarian action through the NOHA program. For just a little bit of context. Basically, it's getting crazy. The world is going crazy with the COVID-19 stuff, and it's scary. I remember reading that there was 15,000 new cases in the States. There are confirmed cases near where my family lives, and it's scary. It's really scary. Numbers keep on growing. Data keeps on getting collected and everything is growing and growing and growing, and it doesn't seem like it's going down. And that's kind of scary. And it's already known that in the States and in Europe, we're still not hitting that, the peak. It's still coming. It may be starting to slow down, maybe in like Italy. I think I read somewhere that it was slowing down a little bit, but yeah, otherwise it's not good. I've been reading what I've been researching. I've been working on understanding protection with COVID-19 for vulnerable groups, determining who are vulnerable groups and why they are vulnerable and how can they be protected. It's a very interesting topic, and I've spent a lot of time searching and figuring out how to write stuff about it, as well as just getting my mind in school mode and getting stuff accomplished. When I was looking through, it's always good to go to trusted news sources when you're looking for data. Most of the news I've been consuming is from not on Facebook. First tip, don't get your news on Facebook. Second tip, go to reputable websites, get your information from the World Health Organization, get your information from the UN, get your information from the CDC, go to trusted news sources. I've been getting a lot of information from the New York Times, from BBC, and from other well-respected news media sources. And one of the documents I've been really puzzling over for the last however many days I've been puzzling this over is the United Nations Humanitarian Response Plan for the COVID-19 crisis. And I'm going to link it down below, and it is a very interesting read if you can power through it. It gives a really real timeline as to what's expected, what the ramifications are, and what kinds of things need to be prioritized and the objectives of each priority, and what are some steps that can be measurable to accomplish it. I love coming up with strategic plans and contingency plans. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I've discovered that since I started this master's degree, and I can seem like a cynic. I want to believe the world is a happy, wonderful place but too often it isn't. So I like coming up with plans for the worst case scenario and thinking about, if the worst case scenario happens, how can we prevent the bad things from happening? So I always have strong words when people don't do contingency plannings like they should when they need to be. And so I'm a very big advocate for coming up with a contingency plan. That's something you should probably do. You need to come up with your contingency plan for COVID-19. Contingency plan is basically something that, in the worst case scenario, how will I go about solving the problems I foresee happening? Or just in general. So think of what the worst case scenario would be for you and your family. Write everything down, write down all your fears, write down everything about it, and then break it down even further. Analyze it. Figure out, okay, I am concerned because I won't have work because I got laid off from my job and we don't know how long this is going to last. How can I make money online? How can I go work around this? What is the minimum expenses? How am I going to get food? What are some ways that I can increase the amount of food I have and maximize its benefits for while we are dealing with a catastrophe, a pandemic of unknown duration of length. Think of all the bad things that scare you and wake you up in the middle of the night and you're worried about. Write down every single one of those things that scares you, even just a little bit, and then come up with a solution to solving it. And that's really helpful. Like for me, I've done this when I've been working on stuff because especially if I'm working on like trying to figure out going home, walking through what is the ramifications of this, what's the cost benefit analysis. And I don't want to sound like I'm super overly analytical and just too rational. I mean, I'm definitely an emotional person, but also if you're able to break things down logically, you can control your emotional response. And so you don't make stupid decisions based only off of your feelings. Because in my experience, my personal experience, some of the worst decisions I've made were based off of emotional responses. Like, there's a time and a place for an emotional decision. If somebody is really annoying and you want to toss your drink in their face, sometimes it may be deserved, but you have to think about the cost-benefit analysis a little bit before you just start chucking a glass of water or other liquid into their face. First of all, will I get caught? Will I get in trouble? And if I throw it, will it come back and stain my clothes? Important things. Yeah, so anyway, the stat I was looking at for the UN's humanitarian response plan for COVID-19 actually was interesting because they came up with 2 ideas for the length of duration of this crisis. I'm not saying that this is what they have said specifically for Europe or specifically for the United States. It's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at doing your puzzling over what the future may look like. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. It's the best thing to do. I would rather be surprised 10 times out of 10 for things to be better than they are worse. So I plan for the worst. I expect bad things to happen, and then if they don't happen, everything's great. Okay, that maybe sounds a bit funky, but it's how I feel about this. So anyway, in their contingency planning, they estimated that the first, which is the most optimistic solution, in my opinion, has a duration of this crisis lasting for 3 to 4 more months. I think this response plan just came out this week, maybe on the 25th. I'll put the actual data down below. And it is looking at the peak of everything happening later than you would like it. When you're looking at making your planning for Easter, it's very unlikely that in the United States or Europe, things are going to get cleared up by Easter. So make your plans in that manner, because even if cases go down, you have to wait for them to go down low enough that it makes rational sense to let people out. There still hasn't hit a peak yet here in Spain. They still haven't hit I don't think they've definitely not hit the peak yet in the United States. There's not enough testing and protective equipment to get things taken care of. So that's the most optimistic, with minimal effect to the economy and loss of life. So expecting 3 to 4 more months. The less optimistic one is the most, honestly, it's the scariest one because it has this as being a protracted problem for 9 to 12 months. This is also looking at it globally, I believe, not just in a specific context, but looking at the crisis globally, which is something we need to be when we're looking at COVID-19, we need to treat what's in front of us and think about what's directly in front of us, but we also need to be thinking about, sorry, my nose got itchy. I'll wash my hands. I just washed them, I promise, too. We need to be thinking about the global response, because you can't get rid of a disease if it still exists somewhere else. I read that the United States pulled funding in Yemen against the advice of several members of the US Congress, and members and a lot of humanitarian organizations based in Yemen, because currently with the way that the warfare is happening in Yemen, there's only 50% of the regular healthcare providers, and beyond that, Yemen is like, they can't even handle cholera. They recently had 2 of the worst cholera outbreaks in human history, and if you can't handle cholera, you definitely can't handle a novel coronavirus. So we need to make sure that we're building capacity for, like, the little people, the people who don't have access. I hate saying little people. That's very patronizing, and I don't want to sound patronizing, but countries with less access to funds and less access to resources, because if these developed countries have access to so many more opportunities and supplies, can't even handle the crisis. What does this mean for little countries that don't have access and aren't prepared? They definitely don't have enough respirators. They definitely don't have enough this, that, and the other. So, yeah. I've always got a lot of strong opinions on a lot of things. But beyond that, on a more personal note, right now they just changed daylight savings time here in Spain. So last night I was confused when I looked at my clock, when I looked at my phone at the clock, and it was like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning right now. I was like, it's not 3 o'clock. I'm still working on this. It's no way it's 3 o'clock. It's only 2. And then I remembered, oh, they just did daylight savings time, so it's an hour later. Yeah, I was up really late working. And so because of that, just, it makes things interesting, and I'm a big proponent for sleep. I love my sleep. Yeah, it's just an interesting time. I got to talk to some friends, do some catching up, got to go to church today, virtually, with my church back in the US. It was so nice. And yeah, then I've been mostly working on schoolwork and figuring out how to write to have intelligible words on explaining protection matters for COVID-19 yeah, been thinking a lot about it. So anyway, I don't have a song today. This is kind of just a quick video update because I'm so mad at myself for missing 2 days, but school is my top priority. I came to Europe to be a graduate student, to go to school. So school comes before fun things. So it is what it is. Yeah. Anyway, so at the end of the video, I've got today's applause. I would put in yesterday and the day befores for day 13 and day 14 of quarantine, but you don't want to have that much applause. It was interesting today because since it's daylight savings time, it's actually daylight. And with that, that means I can actually see the people who are clapping every single night. And that means they can see me, which means I need to make sure I don't look like some hoodlum that just crawled out of like a cave. So I need to make sure I look decent. I need to make sure I'm not wearing the same clothes tomorrow that I did today. Yeah. Oh well. I promise. I promise that's not a problem. Yeah. Anyway, I hope you all stay safe and act smart, stay healthy. And I wish you all the best. If you could like, comment, or subscribe, that would be amazing. And I would love any feedback you would give me. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Okay, good night. Bye. Sounds like squeaky playground. Like some squeaky playground equipment, like mixed with like an ice cream truck.
10 degrees. 10.
10.
10.
10.
Yeah.
10.